Well, we've made it to the final week of the season. It was kind of tough because what happened to Damar Hamlin, but we got the great news over the week. He is he's really improved. He's even talking on his own. So everybody's just so happy that he's recovered so well, myself included. Of course, with that said, we are in for what should be a very interesting final week. And so let's take a look at the playoff picture. So, of course, entering the final week, Kansas City holds sole possession at number one seed at 13-3. Buffalo and Cincinnati will play incomplete seasons as their head-to-head game got canceled. Buffalo sits at 12-3, Cincinnati at 11-4. Jacksonville has the number four spot at 8-8 as they lead the AFC South. In the wild card position, the Chargers and Ravens are tied at 10-6, but the Chargers have the tiebreaker for the number five spot. And we have a three-way tie at 8-8 between the Patriots, Dolphins, and Steelers, but it's the Patriots who are above that playoff line via head-to-head over Pittsburgh and division record over Miami. And of course, the Tennessee Titans are alive, but only for the division. They are eliminated from a wild card spot. So that's the AFC. The NFC, the Eagles are still number one, barely, but they still number one at 13-3. The Niners and Vikings are tied at 12-4, but it's the Niners who have surpassed the Vikings at as the number two team due to conference record, and they've actually clinched that tiebreaker. So they've got the full control of that number two spot. Uh, Vikings are at three. The Buccaneers, who clinched the NFC South last week, are locked in as number four seed. Um, as far as the wild card standings, Cowboys are 12-4. They have a shot at getting number one. I think if I think they can only finish number one or number five. Let me see. I got it in front of me. No, they could actually finish one, two, or five in the conference. If they win a division, they can't finish no lower than two. Um, and the Giants are locked in as number six seed. They're 9-6-1, entering the final week. And just like the AFC, we have a three-way tie at 8-8. Between the Seahawks, Lions, and the Packers. It's the Seahawks that have the tiebreaker. They are above the playoff line, and it is only the Lions and Packers who are alive left as the bubble teams. Okay, so those are the standings entering the final week of the season. And as for scenarios, now again, this is where it gets interesting because the cancellation of the Bills Bengals game led to some changes to the AFC scenarios, and they actually passed. Uh, they actually passed stipulations as far as the AFC Championship. They passed it earlier tonight. So in the event that Kansas City and Buffalo um, face each other in a potential AFC Championship, it'll be in a neutral site. It'll be in a neutral site. Same with Kansas City actually faces the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. If the Bengals and Ravens play each other this week, and if the bank if the Ravens actually win, I think it had to go. The Ravens win, and the Chargers lose, and the Ravens will be the. I think the Ravens will be the five seed. I think I had it wrong. I think they said if the Ravens win that game and end up having to face Cincinnati in the wild card round, then a coin flip will decide home field. But as far as the scenarios, let's get to that. First off, of course, we'll go by conference and by order of standings. And first off is Kansas City. Now, if Kansas City wins, they get a bye. They get the number one seed. But if Kansas City and Buffalo win, or Kansas City and Buffalo both lose, then that's when that whole the stipulation regarding the AFC Championship comes in, because that game prevented the cancellation actually left uh, Buffalo a half game out, and had they won that game, then they would have been tied with the Chiefs, and they had the head to head tiebreaker. So if both teams win or both teams lose, then the whole um, uh, 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 neutral site stipulation comes into play. Should they meet for the conference title? Uh, if it's Cincinnati and Kansas City, that's going to come into play if both Cincinnati and Kansas City lose. If both Buffalo and Kansas City lose and Cincinnati wins, because Cincinnati has a shot at number one seed too. But with the cancellation, they do clinch the AFC North. But yeah, Kansas City wins, they get the number one seed, or if they and Buffalo both tie, or if Buffalo loses. Uh, if Kansas City wins and Buffalo loses or ties, then they get number one seed and home field. So there'll be no need for the neutral site thing because it will be um, a game and a half difference between those two teams. However, if Buffalo wins and Kansas City loses or ties, go to the Buffalo scenario, then they get the number one seed and home field because which and they would get home field because even had Buffalo lost that game, they still would have had the head-to-head tiebreak over Kansas City. And by the way, Kansas City is in Vegas. That game will start week 18. Okay, next up is the AFC South. Next up is the AFC South because that's up for grabs. Tennessee plays Jacksonville. The winner gets it. Now it's not exactly do or die. That's the interesting part. It's not exactly do or die. Whoever wins gets the division. For the losing team, if Tennessee loses, they're done. If Tennessee loses, they are out. If Jacksonville loses, then they actually have one more way in as a wild card. But they will need the other 8-8 teams to lose, all three of them. Miami, New England, and Pittsburgh, and it has to be losses. They can't even tie. Even a tie would eliminate them. The reason is Jacksonville. All four of those teams would be 8-9, but Jacksonville would have the best conference record. That would make them the number 7 seed and put them in the playoffs as the number 7 seed. So we could see 2 8-9 teams in the playoffs. Isn't that something? But yeah, whoever wins that game, that head-to-head game, wins the division, and if the game ends tied, Jacksonville gets the division. Now, as far as the 3 teams competing for the last spot, New England, they're above the line, and if New England, and all they have to do is win. All they have to do is win, and they're in. If they tie, Miami and Pittsburgh can't win, or they can actually back in if Miami and Pittsburgh both lose, and if Jacksonville wins or ties. New England hosts the Bills this week. That's on Sunday. That's on Sunday's. I think it's on the Sunday's early window. Okay, Miami's in with a win or New England loss or tie. If they tie, New England has to lose and Pittsburgh can't win. Miami is facing the Jets, who got eliminated last week. Pittsburgh, if they win, if Miami loses or ties, or New England loses or ties, if all that happens, Pittsburgh's in. If they tie, both Miami and New England have to lose. Pittsburgh is hosting the Cleveland Browns. So, yeah, damn near all of the AFC games are pretty relevant. The only ones that don't mean anything are Chargers, Broncos, and Indy, Houston, because both teams are dead. Now let's get to the NFC. Now let's get to the NFC. Okay, first off, there's the number 1 seed conundrum. Philly, Dallas, and the Niners are all in the race for number 1 seed. Minnesota was eliminated with their loss to the Packers. The best they can do is number 2, and they'll need help getting that. As far as Philly goes, if they win or they tie, they get it all: the division and the number 1 seed and all that comes with it. If Dallas loses or ties, they get the division. If Dallas loses or ties, and San Francisco loses or ties, they get it all. As for Dallas, they get the NFC East with a win and a Philadelphia loss. If you add a San Francisco loss or tie, then they get the number 1 seed. That's right. Dallas can end up with the number 1 seed. The Niners' lone path to the number 1 seed is a win and a Philadelphia loss. The Philadelphia hosts the New York Giants. The Dallas on the road against the Cowboys on the road against the Washington Commanders, and the Niners host the the Arizona Cardinals. All three of those games are on Sunday's late window. Okay, now, last but not least, the one remaining spot in the NFC, that number 7 seed. It is going to be number 7 because the three teams, they can only go up to number 7. They can't pass the Giants. It's a triple threat: Seattle, Detroit, and the Packers. First, I have to start in the standings order, so I'm starting with the Seahawks. Seahawks are 8-8. Seahawks are 8-8. They won last week, earning them the right to stay alive in this race and the right to clinch a spot. Now, despite the fact that they are above the playoff line, they're in the 7th spot, they need help. They need a win, and they need us to lose or tie. If they tie, if they tie, our game has to end tied, and Washington, even though they're eliminated, has to lose or tie. Okay, and of course there's our game, Detroit. Oh, by the way, Seattle and the Rams, that's on the late window too, and Seattle's hosting that game. Now for the game that will end the 2022 regular season on Sunday Night Football, the Packers hosting Detroit. Now here's an interesting thing about Seattle. It's only Detroit that has to depend on the Seattle game. We don't have to depend on it. After all the hardship, after all the tough hardship, we now control our own destiny, finally. We started controlling our own destiny once Washington lost last week. Because when Washington lost, all we had to do was win out. And we won against Minnesota. That means we are just one win away, no help from getting into the playoffs. But like I said, what Seattle does doesn't matter to us. It only matters to Detroit. Detroit needs to win, and Seattle has to lose or tie. Because here's the thing. Seattle, if they win, they eliminate Detroit. If Seattle loses, they eliminate themselves, and our game truly becomes do or die, winner gets the last spot. If our game ends tied, Seattle would have had to lose beforehand to get in. Or Seattle would have to tie, and Washington would actually have to win. As far as the Packers, like I said, after all of this, all we have to do to get in the playoffs, as the late Al Davis says, the former owner of Devontae Adams' current team, the Raiders, just win, baby. That's it. That's all. If the Packers beat the Lions, we are in after a bad start to the season, and it's definitely gonna be something if we actually do get in after all this. But yeah, like I said before, the Seattle game does not matter to us because even if Seattle wins, if we win, then the Packers and Seahawks will be tied at 9-8, but we will have the conference record over Seattle, so that will put us in. So again, as far as the final spot, Seattle needs to win and us to lose. The Seattle game doesn't matter to us; it matters to Detroit. If Seattle wins, Detroit's out. If Seattle loses, they're out, and our game becomes truly do or die. The winner gets in, and all we have to do is win to get in. So there we go. So those are scenarios for the final week, and I'm so excited. It all starts tomorrow. So if you like this video, click the like button, click subscribe if you want more. My story about the playoff picture will be in the description below, so check it out when you can. I'll be back maybe after the early games to give update scenarios. So stay tuned and go Pack Go.